Today, we're talking to Julie Solomon about how she left the corporate world after being completely burnt out, started a blog, and turned it into $1 million business, teaching influencers how to generate more brand deals. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, someone that I met maybe a year or two ago. We've masterminded together. We've been friends for a couple of years now, and I've been on her podcast, and now we get the opportunity to have her on my podcast. And I'm really excited because I know her story is great, but she's also accomplished amazing things like a top 10 podcast. She's releasing a new book. All the stuff that I'm trying to do. She's already done it. So that guest is Julie Solomon. So Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. You know, I'm trying to get a fancy recording studio situation like you have there. Here with my white wall.
I wish that I could take credit for it, but Matt, our creative director, we were talking about this morning. I'm like, if something ever happened to you, I would have no idea how to run any of this stuff. so definitely lucky on that front.
Don't leave, don't go anywhere.
I know. But I'm so lucky and grateful and excited to have you on the podcast. And I don't know a lot about your story. And before we dive into the story, and I think that always makes for a good interview, is like when I don't fully know everything, it keeps me really intrigued in the story. But before we jump into it, can you just give the listeners a little bit, like context or information about what it is you do and how you help people?
Yeah. So I am a, online marketer and business coach by trade. Before that, I was a publicist for about 10 years. And so I really do have the background in the PR and marketing. I went to college for PR marketing communications, did a little bit of a stint in the lifestyle blogging influencer world, which we can talk about. But then that quickly pivoted to me actually showing up and serving a lot of those women in the marketing online business space. And so that's what I do now. And I teach a lot through my programs, and I also share a lot on my podcast, which is the Influencer Podcast.
Gotcha. How did you get the name Influencer Podcast? Because I feel like that would be a name that would get snatched up so quick. Were you just like the first one?
Yeah. I started the podcast in the spring of 2017. So it was like it was really interesting. I launched in April, and then it was like by that October, and I lived in LA at the time. And so it was like by that October, everyone and their dog in LA had a podcast. So I think that I just kind of hit it right at the right time with that. But the reason why I chose that is that I had been, I had been living in Los Angeles, which is like the mecca of influencers and the mecca of blogging, and had done a little bit of that myself, and then really started showing up to support influencers, who I define as really anyone who shows up to create content that persuades somebody else, Right. So however you want to label yourself, we're all influencing something. So I kind of see us as all being influencers, but yeah, that's where the name kind of came from.
Gotcha. Okay. And then how did you fall into what you're doing today? Did you already know you wanted to be an entrepreneur for a while, or was it something like you got your degree and you started working for a corporation and then found that you didn't want to do that? Like, how did you fall into the entrepreneur world?
Yeah. So, I did not know that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I thought that I was going to do what I was supposed to do, what I was told as a young girl that I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go to school and get a degree and then go find a really safe job and get the 401k and da-da-da-da-da. And because I am a good girl, I did that for a while. And, I worked in New York City at one of the top music PR firms for a long time, and then left there and then moved back to Nashville, Tennessee, which was my hometown, and worked for Thomas Nelson, which is one of the largest faith-based book publishing houses in the world. It is now owned by HarperCollins. And so I kind of did that until I one day literally broke out in hives from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And I had no idea what was going on. And I was like, I don't understand what's happening. I'm frustrated. I'm overwhelmed. What's going on? So I went to go talk to somebody who was a life coach. And she goes, well, basically whatever's happening on the inside is showing itself on the outside. So let's walk through this. And through that journey, I found out that, I was miserable with the work that I was doing. The passion was gone. I had no purpose. I had no compass. I knew that I wanted to show up in a much larger way and impact women in a much larger way. And I knew that I wanted to help women find their purpose and make a lot of money doing it. I just had no clue how, where, when, or what that was going to be.
And how long were you in the corporate space at this point?
Yeah, so I was in the corporate space from 2007 to 2012.
Okay, so for 4 years. And then was 2012, or that's more than 4 years, it's 5 years. So was 2012 kind of like that moment where you broke out in hives and you're like, okay, something needs to change?
Yeah. And so what I did at that point is I went out on my own and joined forces with another PR person at the time. And we started becoming basically freelancers. And so we started doing our own PR work. I was essentially now getting hired by Thomas Nelson when I used to be in-house with them. And so I thought that I had figured it out and that I had made it. And, now I was being able to work on my own time and take Fridays off and do all of the things that I said I wanted to do. But there was still this inkling and this something inside me that wasn't quite fulfilled. Right. And that's the thing that I look back now and I'm like, if you are wanting to be an entrepreneur and build your own business and brand so you don't have to work on Fridays, you probably quite haven't figured out what your purpose is. Right. That's what I kind of thought it was. And so it was like I was checking off all the boxes and trying to really force through what I had seen as the perfect business life, if you will. And it still kind of left me wanting more and left me kind of bankrupt. And around this same time, I moved to LA. My husband and I had just had a baby. And I had no friends and I had no way of connecting with people. And so I did what every young girl does when she moves to LA. I started a blog because that's what you do. And luckily, because of just my understanding, and at the time, I wasn't really tapping into my expertise. I actually thought that PR wasn't sexy. I was like, no one's going to care about marketing. No one's going to care about PR. And I would kind of shun it a little bit. And I was like, no, I want to be this content creator. Can
I ask about that? I'm very curious. In 2012, what was PR? What did that look like when you were in the transition of corporate to doing it on your own? I mean, what were you guys actually doing?
Yeah. So we were doing from corporate to me doing it as my own. When I was in corporate, I was doing book PR. And then when I went out on my own, I was still doing book PR. I just wasn't in-house with the corporation anymore. So Gotcha. I was essentially a freelance contractor. So whether the publishing house wanted to hire me or just an author themselves wanted to hire me, and I would start doing the books. And at the time it was a very traditional, and still kind of is to a certain degree. PR is it's a big ship, and it's a big ship to try to turn around. Right. And so I was doing very traditional things when it came to magazines, TV, all of that kind of stuff, really trying to help propel my clients and get the word out. But also at this time, what was really happening, which was unique, was social media, digital marketing, online marketing, and kind of this new wave of stuff that was happening. Right. And because I was getting into blogging, I was starting to kind of see how these two worlds were going to be colliding very, very soon. And so I had this foreshadowing effect of I can keep kind of doing what I'm doing and not really be happy with it. And so what was happening, I was starting to notice that these two worlds were going to start colliding, and I could either stay on the path that I was on, knowing that it's kind of the way out, or I could have the courage to kind of jump into this new possibility and this new idea, which was now online marketing, brand building, kind of more of the stuff that I'm doing today. But at the time I had labeled it as blogging.
Right.
And so
Gotcha.
that's kind of what I was doing.
Okay. I'm actually really curious because we've worked with a couple of corporate clients and it feels like they move really slow, and they have to because there's so many people to the organization that you can't make fast things because all departments going to have to like talk together and all of this stuff. Did you find right around the time you left that the company you're working for was a little slow to the digital world at all? Or was that not really the case?
Very slow. I mean, to the point that they would tell these authors who had no desire nor any business to be on Facebook to get a Facebook account, but there was no like strategy behind it or anything. They were just like, this is what you need to do because this is what everyone is doing. But I had a really good example of what was possible because at the time, Michael Hyatt was the CEO of Thomas Nelson.
Oh, interesting.
And he left to go out on his own and start creating courses. And people were like, good luck, dude, like whatever that is. And it really, I mean, obviously it really took off. And so to kind of be able to see what was possible. And I started seeing it not only in examples like Michael Hyatt, but I would see it in examples with authors and with examples of other content creators that I started researching online. And I remember one time, I'll never forget it. I was doing some kind of research. And by this point I had found, Marie Forleo and Gabby Bernstein and Amy Porterfield and all of these women that were kind of starting to do this. And there was another woman named Melissa Griffin that I found, and she used to do this thing called income reports. And she was reporting that she was making $1 million. And it just like my jaw dropped to the ground. I remember sitting in my makeshift desk in my guest room that I was using as an office, just like really taking in what was possible. And I obviously knew that it was possible to make $1 million in the world. I just never actually thought that it would be possible for me to do that. And so it was this moment. And the way that Melissa was sharing it, it's not like she had some secret or she was some unicorn or that she had won the lottery. It was just very kind of like, I created this and I launched this and I got this many leads and I made this much money. And I knew that she would probably do it again. And so I kind of watched her, and over the course of 6 months, not only did she do it again, but she went from like $1 million to $3 million, like a year or something. I remember it just being crazy.
Yeah, she blew up fast. I remember that. I remember watching the same exact thing. I remember watching her. I don't remember what year this was. Do you remember what year it was when she was kind of like?
It was probably 2015-ish, okay. I would say.
Gotcha.
2014, 2015, because at the time I was still doing my PR stuff with my business partner. And then I was doing the blogging stuff. And because of my background in PR and marketing, and really just because of having the courage to really start looking at, well, what am I good at? I was able to start monetizing my blog pretty quickly. And so, it was kind of this precipice of, I saw Melissa creating online courses and making a lot of money doing it and giving back and really being of service. I was getting so burnt out with my PR work. And seeing what was possible with authors and people like Michael Hyatt growing their own entrepreneurial, entities. And then I had this other piece that I started to have these lifestyle bloggers that were coming to me and they were like, Julie, I don't mean to be rude, but you have like 7,000 followers and you're making tens of thousands of dollars a month and I have 1 million and I'm making nothing.
Right.
Like, how are you doing this?
That's one of the things we say all the time is like, we have like 8,000 fans on Instagram now. But we have a multi-million-dollar business. And
exactly.
I think and correct me if this is wrong, but I think so many people focus on the followers, thinking once I have followers, then I'll make the money, then I'll make the sales, and then it's like, no, there's got to be a monetization process or strategy to all of this stuff, which it sounds like that's what you were kind of like figuring out by watching, people like Michael Hyatt and Melissa Griffin and Amy Porterfield and all of that stuff. I want to backtrack real quick though, because you quickly dropped something. I think it was between 2012 and 2015. You were on your own. You said you were bankrupt when you moved to Los Angeles. Is that true? Like I meant
more emotionally.
Oh, got it. Okay. I was like, okay, I want to dig into that if that was true, but okay. Bankrupt.
Yes, but I did have about $35,000 in student loan debt. Okay. So I was in debt.
Yep.
I had a husband who was constantly, because of his work in the entertainment industry, he was constantly on set in a lot of different places. So he was gone.
Yeah.
I was a new mom in a new city. And so I just felt very lost and alone.
Yeah.
And so was kind of just like looking for these connections, and with something greater than myself, with my new community that I was in, with the people, all of that.
Because your he's an actor, right? Like movies and TV shows and stuff like that.
Yeah. And he does a lot of that.
Was his career taking off? Did he already have it kind of established at this point, or was he kind of like figuring things out as you were figuring things out?
Yeah, he's 15 years older than me. So
Okay.
he's been acting since 1991. So he really already had his career established, and he's a working actor. So, which it's so grateful to be able to say that. But in that industry, and it was changing so much, he has to constantly hustle to like get the next job as well, because he's now has all these reality stars and people like that kind of coming in and taking a lot of roles. And this was the same time that budgets for film were declining and budgets for TV and streaming shows were just doubling and tripling. And so he had to really focus down and pivot on like his structure and where he was going. So he had his thing and I had my thing. And it kind of just created this moment for me to really dive into, to really courage is the word that I keep coming back to, because I had to, what was my other choice? Like I could either be alone and miserable and keep doing this work that I was doing and it's not getting me anywhere, or I could really start thinking and feeling in a way that I like, in a way that I wanted to be. I could start trying to become the person that I wanted to be in the future today, even though I didn't really know what that looked like or felt like. But I started to have little glimmers of examples in these people that I would find online. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, every entrepreneur has to go through. And I think a lot of people, that are, I don't mean this as a bad thing, but like the wantrepreneur, like the person who's kind of like dabbling in it, never really makes the full commitment. What they don't realize is that sometimes you just have to walk off the cliff and hope the net appears. And you did that several times by leaving the corporate, by moving all the way, to Los Angeles, to putting a blog out there. Like you're just going for it. And then focusing on like that be, do, have model. Who do I need to be? I'm going to be that person now before I get there so that I can start to have the results that they want. And it sounds like things kind of started to fall into place. Like you moved to LA, you started the blog, you started like following all these other people, and you're monetizing it. But how were you specifically monetizing? Well, two questions. Number one, how did you get the traffic to the blog? And then once you had the blog, how are you monetizing it? Were you using courses and stuff like that at this point?
Yeah. So, my blog traffic at the beginning was pretty dismal because, again, I didn't have a big followership and I was kind of like looking around and seeing what everyone else was doing and then just kind of copying them, if I'm being honest, because I didn't have any sense of direction myself, nor did I have the confidence or the clarity at the time to just like go all in on what I wanted to do. And I remember my husband, and this is kind of funny, that the night that he met me, he put me in his phone as Julie Publicist. And I was like, how many Julies do you have in there? Like Julie, I was Julie Publicist. And so this was kind of this running joke that we would be like, that's what he would call me. And he was saying during this time, because he saw that I wanted to transition out of publicity, but then he also kind of saw me going into this blogger thing really unauthentically. And he just said, Julie, you have to be Julie Publicist. You have to keep that core of what makes you who you are. And I didn't really understand it at the time because I was like, well, I don't want to be Julie Publicist anymore. That doesn't light me up. That doesn't give me passion. I want to do this thing. But what I really think that he meant at the time was like, you actually have a track record of experience and results from this that you don't want to lose. And if you could figure out a way to bring that into this world and to really tap into that, I think that you would be onto something. And so after resisting it for a really long time, I finally was like, okay, and this was probably a good 18 to 2 years into it. So I started blogging in 2013. So this was around 2015. Okay. I did a post and it was something simple like the top 5 PR mistakes every blogger makes and how to fix them. And that one blog post got more traffic to it than all of my other blog posts combined over the last 2 years. And I was on Squarespace. I didn't have any SEO hacks. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what SEO was at the time. So, but it was just that the followers that I did have, which were these other bloggers and other content creators, they found that to be really curious. They started sharing it with each other. And it was really the data and the results that I needed to give me the confidence that like, okay, now I think I'm onto something. And that's when the clarity kicked in.
Yeah. Okay. It's really funny when you said I was just kind of like copying everyone. And what's really funny is like if someone starts a course-based business today, like they're not going to feel like they're copying anyone. It's literally like an industry now, but back then it was like, okay, I see these people trying these little things and all this other stuff. And if like, it's just funny, like a weird, not a weird perspective, but a different perspective where you're like, you're like, I was just kind of copying them, but really it was like the beginning of really a big industry that was just like starting to kind of take off. And is that how you started monetizing it? So you started to like, it seems like you started to get traction now. Is that what you were doing, the monetizing?
Yeah. And then, so I started monetizing it because I knew how to pitch myself, because I had been a publicist, I would take the initiative to reach out to these brands, because that was the other thing that I was noticing that was happening in LA is I would even go to some of these events, or I would just hear about it that, I would go to like a blogger event and you would have, the heads of the companies who make all of the buying decisions, who have the marketing budget standing right there. And there would be a blogger in the corner just like doing this. And I'm like, why aren't you building a relationship with this person? This is a person that literally wants to give you money and they don't even know you exist because you're in the corner on your phone. Yeah. So I just took the initiative to talk to people and to ask questions and to get really curious. And because of my background, I did have corporate experience. So I did know things like what was a marketing budget and why return on investment was important. And it's not like this money just fell on trees that these brands wanted to give to influencers without seeing any type of ROI. So I would ask them things like, what are the products that are most important for you Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4? Are you looking for conversion? Are you looking for brand awareness? I would ask these questions and get really curious. And then once I had the information, I would use that information to curate a pitch that was really unique to what it is that the brand was looking for. So instead of making it about me, I made it about them. And that is what really allowed me to open the door and start getting these opportunities with, at the time, a very small following. I didn't have a lot of blog views. I didn't have all of those things, but what I had was ability to connect and ability to really understand the marketing side of things and just the ability to not be afraid of the no's. Right. And I think that that's a big one. I think that a lot of people don't even make an offer because they're so afraid of hearing no. Whereas I would hear and still hear no all the time, but I like to learn from my no's. That's where I can get curious. That's where I can up level, pivot, and make changes. And so, and I'll share one story. I wanted to get my house remodeled, but I didn't have any money to do it. So I was like, well, I wonder at the time, if I can get a brand to give me furniture and to remodel my house. So I pitched to like 15 different brands. None of them were interested. World Market being one of them. And they were just like, thanks, but no thanks. You're not a big enough person.
How big was your following at that point?
I mean, maybe it was less than 10,000.
Okay.
So World Market said, thanks, but no thanks. And instead of just going about my day, I replied to World Market and I said, well, what are you looking for right now? Like, what would help you move the needle? And they were like, well, to be honest, we're trying to get press. We're trying to get PR. And I was like, well, what if I could get this featured in People magazine? Would you want to do it then? And they were like, sure. And I was like, great. Okay, now how do I get this thing featured in People magazine? So then I went and I pitched to People magazine. And I at the time, my son, who's now 7, he was about to become a toddler. And so I pitched to People magazine because they have this like mom blog beat that they do online. Yep. And I was like, hey, would you be interested in a transformation piece of a baby room going to a toddler room? World Market is interested in doing a collaboration. Would you be interested in that? And they were like, yeah, we would, but could we see more of just instead of his room, could we see transformations of other things? So then I went back to World Market and I said, People magazine really wants to do it, but in order for them to do it, you have to do the whole house.
Oh my gosh, this is genius. I love this.
And they were like, okay. And so I got And not only did I get the world market, but then they teamed up with another company called Decorist, and I got free interior design services. Wow. So just from being curious, asking questions, and trying to find a solution for someone else, I was able to get over $250,000 worth of furniture and free interior design services.
Are you kidding me? That's insane. So, okay. So, man, so many questions. The first one is, did you get all of that stuff happening because you basically got the two brands together, and then obviously you documented it all, and was that documentation process like published on your platforms, like your Instagram, and then your Instagram, or not Instagram, but your blog was then featured on People, or did people, I don't even know if I'm asking the question the right way, but did People take all the transformation footage and put it onto their magazine? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it was both. So People got the exclusive. So they took, they hired a photographer. The photographer came, took photos. They did an interview with me, and then they posted that on their website and then on their blog portion of the website that talked about like interior design. And then after that went up, I put it on my blog and then tagged World Market and all of that. And then it was my job, because for World Market, they wanted to make sure that they were going to be tagged in the feature. So it was my job to work with the editors at People to make sure that World Market got credit. Otherwise, it was just what's in it for them.
Right.
And so doing it in this way, it allowed for, like, at that point, who cares about my follower number?
Right.
Because it's not about me at that point. It's about the exposure that World Market is getting from this national media outlet.
Yeah.
And so after this happened, and a lot of people were like, how did you do this? How is this done? And I'm like, well, maybe I should teach this. And then that's where the idea of my very first course, Pitch It Perfect, came from.
Okay.
And I created that course in 2016, and it's still running strong. It was really the first course of its kind at the time that really taught pitching and negotiation in terms of, content creators, or really anyone who wants to work with brands. And that now is a 7-figure a year course that has just been, up leveled and revamped every single year. I've had students in there since 2016 that they've got to see all the different variations and iterations of it. And it's really amazing that, now that whole industry has changed so much that you really do have to think outside the box in that way, and that's really what I teach inside the program of, like, everyone is a content creator. Everyone is in sales. Everyone is an influencer. So how are we going to tap into your uniqueness and really make that shine? Yes, not everyone, that's, a lot of people say, well, I'm not like you, Julie. I'm not a publicist. I don't have 10 years of experience. I don't have this. And I'm like, yeah, but you got a computer. Yeah. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think about, you don't have to be a publicist to reach out to People magazine.
Right.
Like, you don't, not in today's age.
But so how did you reach out to them? Like, how did you get in contact with both of those? Because those are big companies.
I went online and I did research, and I found, it wasn't just People. I went to a bunch of different outlets that I was looking for, outlets that covered, interior design, makeovers, mom kind of focused stuff, because that was the beat and that was the topic of this pitch. And then once I would find some articles, I would literally Google, like, People magazine interior design editor, People magazine. And I would just keep Googling until I found contacts. And, it's even easier now to get contacts than it's ever been, because you can go into DMs. There's so many different opportunities now, but back in 2016, it wasn't that easy. You kind of you had to do a little bit more Google digging than you do now. But,
Gotcha.
I would spend, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes digging through press releases, digging through company websites, digging through articles, finding contacts, and then just pitching them. Yeah,
that's just unbelievable. I mean, such an amazing story, because there's so many things that I kind of want to go into. But first of all, I think the advice you got from your husband was just amazing. It's like, take these skills that you have and bring them into an industry and use them in a dynamic or a way that just isn't done yet. And that's kind of how I view what we do too, is, the way we talk about communication and messaging and stuff, like, it's the same type of styles that, best-selling book authors will use when writing books. It's the same type of thing, people use when they create great speeches, but we just brought it to the online world. And it's just kind of like, wow, I never heard of this stuff before, or we've never seen it applied in this way. So it's really smart for you to kind of like do that, pick up on that and to do that. But the thing that's also really, really unique is that I think that people have, I don't know what the right word is, but it's just this unique perspective or this unfair perspective of what influencing is or what influencers are. And they think that it's just people that go and pose pictures, have a big following, and then they'll just like hopefully get a brand deal, like hope a brand will reach out to them. And you know, so I think some people tend to roll their eyes a little bit at the influencer space because they don't fully get it. And what you're doing is just like, it's not about like the followers. It's not about all of this stuff. I mean, it might be to some degree, but what it really is about connecting brands to more exposure. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be on your platform, for example, because when I look at this deal that you laid out, you did nothing more than talk to 2 brands and figure out what's going to work for you, what's going to work for you. And then you organized the deal, right? And you're able to get them
negotiated
the
it.
Yeah. And negotiate it. And I know because, you know, I've talked to you and I've worked with you a little bit on some messaging stuff, but like, the thing that you teach is really about how to communicate in a way that's all about the other person and figuring out what they want so that you can organize something that's beneficial for the both of you guys. And it's genius.
Exactly.
It's extremely, extremely smart. So to figure all that stuff out, was it literally you just using a lot of the publicist skills that you had, or did you have to kind of do some learning and figuring out of stuff as well?
Yeah, it was both. I mean, I leaned on my PR skills and my pitching skills that I had amassed as much as possible. But really a lot of what I learned, and especially when it comes to negotiation, was just me doing it over and over and over and over again, and then tweaking and refining the process. And that's what I tell a lot of my students in the Pitch It Perfect program. We have an entire module on negotiations because it is such a huge part of the whole pitching process, and really learning how to positively persuade someone and really come from that place of service and really put yourself in their shoes and really get a clear scope of understanding of what it is that they need, want, and desire, so you can try to deliver that to the best of your ability. Yeah. And so the negotiation I learned just through years of trial and error of negotiating my own brand deals and then negotiating deals for other content creators. Before I created the course, I did some stuff like that. And then of course, building it out in the program, and making it a huge part of what I teach.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, again, that's part of being an entrepreneur, is just like going out there, doing it, testing, tweaking, trying it, and not labeling those things as failures if they don't work out. I mean, it literally is just an experiment to get data that you get to use to refine and improve your product and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's around 2016. It sounds like when you got that deal, and then you kind of created this program. But I know you also have your podcast. You eventually, and you're working on a book deal now. You have a couple, I think, another program as well. So at 2016, and you started like figuring out, okay, this is a great deal. This is what my course is going to be. I'm figuring out, I'm going to teach people how to pitch and stuff like that. Where does it go from there? Was it just kind of like a steady, like upward swing at that point?
Yeah, it was just overnight success. And then I woke up and here I am. Yeah. No, there was a lot of struggles and pitfalls along the way. I was doing, in 2016, I created the first course, the first iteration of the course. And it was a very slow burn. I did not have the quote unquote Melissa Griffin experience like I was sharing. It's not like I launched this thing and then made $1 million off of it. It took until 2018. It took for 2 years until I hit the first 7 figures off of that, which is, it's still a short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. But in this online space, when you're constantly inundated with hearing stories about how people create this course, send a few emails out and make $10 million, it really starts to make you feel like you're missing something. And I was missing something. And the thing that I was missing was community. Mm. And so in 2016, I didn't, other than people that I would find on the internet, I didn't know anybody else that was doing what it was that I was trying to do and what it was that I was aspiring to do. And so the first thing that I did as a way to try to connect with people and really build my platform up more and build my brand up more was a podcast. Mm. And so the influencer podcast started in April of 2017, as I mentioned earlier. And it was just, again, a way for me to connect with people, have conversations, of course, give back to my community because they were craving more than just the pitching. They wanted more branding. They wanted more marketing, business building, all of the things. And then it allowed me to kind of start tapping into more of how do I want to be seen as an authority? What is my authority? Do I have one? What does that look like? And so that started, and that gave me a little taste of a deeper connection with people. But what really did it for me was that in the fall of 2017, I joined a mastermind. And that's what took me to seven figures. That's what allowed me to meet people that were like me, that had the same vision as I did, that were going where I was going. Because I really don't think you can get to where you want to go unless you have people around you. They're literally going where you're going.
100%.
And so the community component for me, and really bringing that in and investing in community, was a huge catalyst in transformation to the success that I see today.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you said community at first, I actually thought you meant like focusing your audience is building a community with your audience, but you're talking about like building a community of like-minded people that are going to the same place as you, like your tribe, essentially, your business besties, if you will.
Yes, my business besties.
Yeah, well, I tell people this all the time, and I tell a lot of our students this all the time, especially because we have a mentorship program, and I tell them every time we have a live event, like, these people around you right now, these are the people you want to connect with. Like, go have those conversations, go have dinner and lunch together, because you're all at the same place and you're going to grow all together. And like, James Wedmore's a really good friend of mine. I've known him for years, but when we met, he didn't even have a seven-figure business yet. Jim Fortin's another friend of mine who didn't even have an online business when we met, but all three of us have just been growing and growing and growing and growing. And people just don't understand the value in that. Not only can you like talk out your fears or worries or concerns, but you can share your wins, but also it's almost like, imagine business being a giant puzzle, and you go and you figure out one of the pieces, and then they figure out one of the pieces, and you can come together and put those pieces together, and you learn from each other, and it accelerates everybody's growth. And so I tell people all the time, it's a vital thing. And me as an introvert, I had never wanted to do that stuff, but it was definitely a necessary piece, and glad to hear it was for you. At that point, at 2017, do you mind sharing whose mastermind you joined?
I joined Melissa Griffin's.
Oh, how funny. It's all
well, and this is the thing. And I think that this is important to note, is that, and I learned this early on just in the corporate world. It's like, when you think about coaches and like people that you want to align with and learn from, I'm a firm believer that you want to be coached by someone who has actually done what it is that you're trying to do. If you want to write a best-selling book, you should probably go to someone who has either written or marketed a best-selling book. If you are wanting a seven-figure funnel, you need to go and learn from someone who actually has a seven-figure funnel. Yeah. And I learned very quickly in this industry that there's a lot of people in the online space that will just like, just because you have a laptop doesn't make you an expert in what it is that you're doing. And, there was a lot of kind of diving through things for me to really find who I thought was authentic and real and really practice what they preached and really knew what they were doing. And I got very clear. I knew that I wanted that program to become evergreen. I wanted to start running a lot of Facebook ads to it, and I wanted it to be a seven-figure funnel. And I knew that Melissa had done that. And so that's all I needed to know to make that decision to join into that mastermind, is that I want to learn how to do this. She's done it. She did it quickly with pretty much, I don't want to say easy, but with ease, because she figured out the automations. Right. So I like add to cart. I want what she's having, right. So that was kind of the precipice for me. And then once I got in there, I really realized how important, like, oh, it's actually not about Melissa at all. It's really about this community and how we're supporting one another and all of this wisdom that I'm learning from all of these other people, on top of the greatness that I learned from Melissa as well. But that was kind of the first piece. And for me, I never really, and I still don't, I don't focus on a follower number. I knew that if I knew that people bought results, not information. So if I could just keep my head down and really keep my intentions clear and do good work and get people results, my community would come. And like, if you build it, they will come in some way. And so I did choose to believe that. And I still believe that. So it was really about how can I surround myself around the people that are going to support me in the next wave of where I'm going. Therefore, I can support my community of people who are looking to me to be that solution provider for them as well.
Oh, I love that. And it makes so much sense. And I think that's one of the things that just goes untalked about so much in the space, because everyone just thinks it's like, what's the strategy? What's the process? What's the framework? What's this? And there's all these invisible things going on that no one really talks about that are absolutely vital. And it does. It's like the people that surround you, they do have an influence over like how you show up too. Like if they are showing up for their community at certain levels, then it means you likely will too. Or if they're not doing it, then you may not as well. And so I mean, absolutely love that. And there's something that you talked about, which is you wanted to learn from someone who actually done it or has done it. And there's something I talk about, which is like knowledge versus knowing. And a lot of people have that knowledge. They like know, okay, this is what you do. This is how you make a funnel because this is what I've heard and this is what I've learned, but they haven't done it. When you do it, you just have a deep knowing of something and it allows you to be a better teacher, a better communicator. And it seems like that's what you found in Melissa and her mastermind. And clearly, you know, the results show from that. It sounds like it was a great experience for you. At that moment, 2017, it sounds like things started to grow and to kind of take off. What did 2017 to current day look for you? And then I wanted, once we go through that, I want to transition to how people can start creating deals themselves. But what was the journey from 17 to today?
Yeah. So, I got to a place, and as I mentioned, my husband, he's 15 years older than me. He has been very fortunate and blessed and lucky, however you want to say it, to have a very successful working career in his industry for a long time. But he's 52 years old, and I started seeing him kind of like take jobs that I knew that he really didn't want to take, but maybe he thought he had to take them for the money and to support the family. And I saw the toll that it was kind of taking on him of just, he's dyslexic and having to memorize lines and having to travel and go to all these places and, work with really crappy people sometimes. And I remember around that time, I was like, I want to be able to afford him. Not that he needs me to afford him, but like, I want to get to a place where my business is so solidified and prosperous to where like, I can afford our family, basically. Right. Yep. And I think that took a lot of mindset shift for me, because being a woman growing up in the South, I was always told this story that there's like somebody out there that's going to take care of me, right? Like whether it's the husband or the knight in shining armor or whatever you want to have it. And I had to make the decision, and not that my husband couldn't or wouldn't, but I wanted something bigger for myself. Right. I wanted to be able to take care of myself and have that greatness. It meant a lot to me to have that. I didn't want to struggle. I didn't want to not understand money like my mom never did, or like my grandmother never did. It was important to me to really start to understand money, not just, yay, I made, 6 figures off this launch, but like, what am I doing with this money? Like, how am I using this money to make me more money? How am I investing this money? And so that is when I started to think bigger about money. And I knew that there were a lot of holes that were missing, and there was a lot more learning that I needed to do. And so I started to just deep dive into learning, reading a lot of books, anything that I could do, conferences, things that I could just start learning more about how to double and triple money. And not just with an automated course, right? But like how to invest properly. And that was a huge, and I had a lot of resistance around it because I had always told myself that like, I wasn't good at math, so I can't be good at money, all of these stories that I would tell myself. And it was that precipice of just wanting to stretch myself and understand that really, started making me think bigger. And then from there, I was told something once, and I wish I remember who told me. I don't remember who it was, but they said, might have actually been James Wedmore. The money that you make is a direct reflection of the service that you're giving to the world. And I remember when I first heard that, the money you make is a direct reflection of the service that you're giving to the world. It kind of pissed me off because I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm a mom and I give back to charities and like, I'm showing up on my Facebook and my Instagram live and, but then when I really sat with it, it's true. Money is just an exchange of energy. Right. And so the more energy that you can get out into the world, the bigger service that you're going to have, the more money you're going to make. And I love money and I want to make a lot of it. Yeah. Not everybody feels that way, and that's okay. But it's like whatever success is to you, it's all relative to each person. But it was really important for me to not feel shame or guilt or confusion around money and around that success. And so that's when I really knew I needed to kick it up a notch. That, I had this funnel and it was doing well, but also to like the days of like just sitting back and letting Facebook ads do their thing and making $4 off of $1 on ads. Like this just, it's not the name of the game anymore.
No,
and
definitely not.
You can't just sit back and have, or at least from my understanding, you can't just sit back and make millions and millions of dollars off of one funnel anymore. It just doesn't happen.
No, I mean,
and
this is, people have to understand this is an actual business, and there's no business right. that you just like put off on autopilot. I mean, it might work for short term, but yeah, you got to treat this thing like a business because that's what it is. For sure.
And I know some people that, they did that for a couple of years. They just autopilot and brought in the cash, but then now they're having to really restructure their entire business model because
there's too many people, too many experts now. You're not the only person teaching what you're teaching.
Yep. And so, and then that's when I kind of felt like I was getting this greater calling to kind of show up and serve in a bigger way. And for me, that was coaching. And so that's when I started to put plans in place to create my own mastermind. And today that is called Shine. And it's an accelerator program. And we have it's open year round. It's for women entrepreneurs who it's kind of one of the two. They either have laid the business foundation. There's someone like me that maybe came from that corporate or agency background, but they're looking for that influence and impact piece. Or they're the person that, amassed the influence and the impact, but they never really got into it to start a business, but now it's like running and moving and they need the foundations. And so that's what we offer them there. And so that's how I show up and serve at a more higher touch and high level way now.
Gotcha. Okay. I love that. The thing I really love about you, Julie, is that you've overcome a lot, and just even you've hinted at small things that I don't think people even like fully realize. Like you said, you moved to LA and you're trying to you figure out this whole blogging thing, and your husband was traveling a lot because he was working, on different jobs, and you had, I think it's your daughter. Was it daughter or son? Daughter?
My son first.
Son.
Yeah.
Done. Okay. So your son, I can't even imagine, I have 3 kids, and luckily my wife, is a stay-at-home mom and is able to do a lot of that stuff. So I can be here and work, but to have to move to a different place, not to know anybody, to trying this new thing, to also being a new mom, I'm like, that's insane. That's just incredible. But the one thing I do see about you and hearing in your story is that it's like true entrepreneurship. It's like, I'm done here. I don't like this. And you don't wait around. You don't wait for something to change. You're just like, nope, I'm moving on. And you go and you do that. You move over here and I'm going to go figure this out. And then you get to the point where I want to make more money. So I'm going to go figure out how to do that. I'm going to go work with this person. And I really admire that about you, because I don't think a lot of people do that enough. And I don't think even a lot of entrepreneurs do that enough. But would you agree that's a part of being an entrepreneur? That's the thing that, like, probably the most important thing that you have to do, right?
I mean, I think so. I think that entrepreneurship and risk and reward all kind of go hand in hand. I am going to be somebody that's like, take me to Vegas, because I'm going to probably roll the dice a little bit more than maybe somebody else.
I'm the same way.
Like I tend to just kind of go all in. But I do that, and some people may call that reckless abandon, but I have this unwavering belief and faith that, like, I can figure it out. Yeah. I don't have all the answers, but if I focus down and I keep my eye on the prize and I keep my focus on, I can figure it out. And if I can't figure it out, I can find a process, a system, or a person to help me figure it out.
Yeah. So
I do believe that I always have a choice. I decided a long time ago to never play a victim ever. That gets you nowhere. And I think that if you find things, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Yep. So if you find things that just start driving you insane, it's probably you need to kind of dig a little deeper into like where the root of that is really coming from. So I think that really learning to keep the focus on myself and really taking 100% responsibility for my thoughts and my feelings and my actions and my reactions, which get me my results, have allowed me to also play more, because I can't control everything, but no one is responsible really to an extent for my success other than me. No one's responsible. It's nobody's job to teach me anything or give me anything or bestow to me anything. That's my job.
Right.
And so if I want it, I have to go out and get it.
Yeah. And again, there's so many successful entrepreneurs that feel the exact same way. I mean, again, I think that perspective on life, it just, not only does it lead to a lot of success, but it just leads to a lot more like enjoyable living. Like you're not controlled by the external all the time. It's just, everything's such an internal battle, which, if you can live that way, eventually leads to success. So I agree with you 100%. I wanted to quickly just talk about before we wrap up, if there is someone out there who's like, okay, I have a little bit of a following, I would love to monetize these brand deals. Like, what's the first steps that you would recommend them do? Number one, but number two, like, how many followers does someone actually need to start getting brand deals? Do they need 100,000, or is it possible something a lot smaller than that?
Yeah. Well, I have students in Pitch It Perfect with as little as 200 followers that have monetized their blog or their brand.
200?
Yes. 200.
Okay. Can you give me one example? Like what kind of deals are they getting?
So, usually with small, they're micro influencers. So they sometimes will go local, work with small boutique brands that are just wanting to get the local awareness out. I had one student, Amy, one time that she had I think 500 followers, and she was like, I don't know, I don't have the swipe up, and I don't have this, and I'm like, well, you can get that. What can you actually work with today? Yeah. And so I walked her through and helped her figure out an idea to basically pitch. So in her town, she was going to all of these local boutiques, and she was like, if you pay me, I'm going to do a segment on the local news station about spring fashion trends. And I'll take a hat from this shop and a shirt from this shop and a dress from this shop, and I'll create this, segment for this local news station. And so she had all of these local boutiques doing brand deals with her. And then in response, not only were they getting reach from her local, her Instagram at the time, her 500 followers that followed her that were predominantly local, but then they were getting this TV segment as well at her local news station. And I mean, she lived in Kansas. Wow. And so it's like, and this is the thing, you have to work with what you have today. What do I have? And everyone has something. And that's the thing that, you have to first believe what's possible and know that that you have something within you. It may not be, what I have or what Brandon has or what she has or he has, but you have something that no one else has, because no one else has your life experience, your education, how you view the world, all of that. Right. And so it just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of digging in to kind of figure out what that it is.
Gotcha. And I think that's the thing that most people mess up or they don't take into consideration. They're always focused on what I don't have. Even the first person you're talking about, like, I don't have the swipe up and I don't have this. And then you automatically just went into like, okay, what do you have? Who can we work with? How do we make something happen? It's not about because focusing on what you don't have all the time or what went wrong, it's wasted energy. And if we just like refocus that energy on what we do have, magic can start to happen. And so,
exactly.
And I love that. So is that really like the first step, is just kind of looking around at like what you do have and just seeing what opportunities you can create?
Like, what do I have? What do people typically come to me for? What do I, because that's the other thing that people are like, I don't know what people find valuable to me, because it's all about figuring out what is that value piece? What is that worth? Because, it's a brand doesn't invest with someone because they don't have enough followers. I don't care what anyone says. A brand won't invest with you because they don't see the value in what it is that you're bringing to the table, period. Yeah. So the follower thing, that's just an easy way for a brand to be like, she's not valuable. She doesn't have enough followers. Yeah. But it's really that value piece. And so you have to start tapping in what I call your brand values of what are your values as a brand, as an influencer, as a content creator. What are your, why do you want to pick up the phone and create something today? And what is valuable to the person on the other end of that phone? Gotcha. And so questions that people can ask themselves are, what do people typically come to you for? What do you find interesting? What do you find yourself Googling? What do you find yourself being interested in? What is that one thing that it's like you wish you could quit, but you can't quit? Right. all of those kinds of things is what can get you to your value point. And then once you find that, that's what you can start pitching, and that's what you start selling. Okay, amazing. And then how do you recommend people start to pitch? Like, let's say they found someone that they want to pitch to. Do you literally just start off by saying like, what do you, I'm assuming no, the answer is no, but you don't just start off saying like, what do you need? Is there a way to like frame a pitch? Yeah. I mean, if you're someone you don't have a lot of followers, then what I would recommend is, hi, my name is so-and-so. I would first make sure that whatever brand you're pitching to, you actually follow them on Instagram. Yep. Smart. You do your research, check out their websites, read their most recent PR releases. What kind of products do they have coming into the marketplace that they're going to be focusing on? And be genuinely interested in the brands that you're reaching out to. I also say like, start small. I used to say this to my authors all the time that would come to me, first time author wanting to get on Oprah. I'm like, okay, well, you haven't even been on, WKRQ yet. So like, let's bring it. We can get there. I love thinking big, but like, let's build it. Right. Yep. And so, start small, go to those local places or those regional places or some of just the smaller companies. Go to Etsy shops that you find, and you want to be able to prove it to them. And this is the other thing too, that I see a lot of people that are like, well, I don't want to do something if I'm not going to make money. And it's like, yeah, but do you just expect the brand to give you money if they don't have any proof that you're actually going to help build awareness or convert for them? So what I recommend is that if you're really passionate about a product or a brand or a company, be willing to do something for them. So then you can show them the data of, hey, I posted this and this is how many comments I got. And this is how many DMs that I got about it. And this is how many people said that they, bought it because I mentioned it. Right. Like really, really ask yourself, how can I present, kind of formulate a case study, if you will, a press kit, if you will, with data, no matter how big or small that you are, that shows that you're the right person for them to align with. You really do have to give everything to the brand or to the media outlet on a silver platter, make it super easy for them. Even sending a couple of different of like pitch ideas, like I could do this, this, or this. Right. Is that helpful? I love to kind of end a pitch with, is this helpful? Is this supportive for you, with a question mark? That way the ball's kind of in their court to respond. Right. And then something else to remember, again, it's about the no's. They say, whoever they is that someone has to be offered something at least 7 or 8 times before they consider purchasing it. Yeah. So that just goes to show you how many pitches and follow-ups you need to do. And don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Don't be afraid to voice text. don't be afraid to go outside of the box and find a multitude of different ways to reach out to them. It's not just about sending one email. They didn't respond. I guess no one loves me.
Right.
It's like, take the next step, take the extra step and getting this across. And if you really want to do this, it's work. It's a business model. But if you really want to do it, it is possible. I see it happen every day. We've got over 5,000 students in my program with varying different follower numbers and reaches and backgrounds and varying different countries. And the ones that really show up and work it works for them.
Yeah. I mean, and that's true with anything too. It's like, you can't just put in minimal effort and expect maximum returns. One of the things that we did when we got started is I literally would do videos for free. Like, I just walk up to a business and be like, can I do this for free, to do exactly what you're talking about? It's like to build those case studies. Like, I'm going to do this for free. This would normally cost thousands of dollars, but then I'm going to run it. We're going to get results. And then I want to have your permission to use that as a case study that I can go and use to sell. And that's what I did. I did that for a couple months, just free, building things up so that I had that arsenal or that like case study or that ammo to like go to another person and actually ask for the money. And those are all things that people wouldn't normally do. And I think, what I hear you saying is, instead of looking at it of what you want, put yourself in the shoes of the person you're pitching to and go like, what do they want? And how do I frame this thing so that it gives them what they want, but it's also something they don't have to think about. It just makes sense as soon as they see it. And It's like, it seems so simple, but it's also one of the things that 99% of the people just don't do. And then even when they try to do it, they still can't get it just right. And so but when you can, and you like learn from the no's and get all that data, it just seems like it's something that can, obviously work really well, but also start giving you the results you want. And I mean, I tell people all the time, it seems like I don't know why it's such a weird concept, but give people what they want, and then you'll eventually get what you want. Like, I tell my kids all the time, like, if you're nice to people, they'll probably be nice to you. And it's the same thing here. Like, give people what they want, and then you'll probably get what you want.
And you got to ask, it's like they ask, you answer, it's, you got to give them what they want. And I think, another bit to that with, you got to embrace the fact that you're in sales.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a hard thing for people. I have people that they're like, well, I'm not an influencer, I'm a content creator. And I'm like, I don't care what you want to label yourself. You're selling something. And like, brands don't hire you to create content for them. They don't hire you for your followers. They hire you to make sales.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, unless you've got some that like to do, brand awareness and other things. But 9 times out of 10, especially smaller companies, they want to make sales. It is the bottom line. Right. So how are you helping them sell?
Yeah.
Period.
Well, they're businesses. Like the objective of a business is to generate profit. That's why a business exists. And so obviously help them make that, you'll get what you want. Makes total sense. So we have a couple questions that are like fire rapid questions that I always like to wrap up every episode with. But before we hop into those, where can people go to learn more about you, to work with you, to listen to your podcast and all that good stuff?
Sure. So on Instagram is where I tend to hang out the most, on Instagram stories, and that is at Jules Solomon, JULSSOLOMON. You can also find me wherever you listen to podcasts. It is the Influencer Podcast. And then you can head on over to pitchitperfect.net if you want to learn how to pitch and land brand deals yourself. And then you can find me at juliesolomon.net/shine if you're looking for some higher level coaching and support on how to grow the business of your dreams and make a lot of money doing it.
Awesome. Love that. So did you say it was pitchitperfect.net?
Yes.
Did you have any issues with the movie? Because isn't there a movie called Pitch It Perfect, or am I just making things up?
Yes, they came after me. It's Pitch Perfect. And yeah, I can't get the .com to save my life, but.
Oh, well, it still works, obviously.
Yes, still works.
Okay. So we got a couple questions, just fire rapid, just quick answers. Do you make most of your decisions with your head or your heart?
Head.
Okay. Interesting. Do you think that entrepreneurship should be taught in schools?
Yes.
Okay. I think I have never heard a no to that. I probably should take that question out of the podcast because everyone always says yes.
We're fine. We're being taught about wars that happened thousands of years ago in foreign countries, but no one knows how to balance a checkbook. Like it makes no sense.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I agree with you. Okay. Next question is, where are you going to be in 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I will be my home base will be Nashville, Tennessee. Still in 5 years, I will be writing books and coaching my high-level students through success.
Awesome. And then the last question is, what is the either one pivotal moment or the most important thing you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey that led to the most amount of success?
I think now success equals joy. Mm-hmm. And so if you can really find the joy in what it is that you're doing, you are going to win.
Yeah. I tell people that in a different way when it comes to messaging is like, to me, that's what alignment is when you hear it all the time. It's almost like a buzzword now, but it is as simple as remembering who you are, what you love, and doing more of that. And when you're there, you just find this level of creation and I don't know, just beauty in everything you do, whether you don't have the results yet or do or whatever. I love that answer. Julie, thank you so much for being on the podcast, giving us an hour or so of your time. Super grateful for you, for our friendship, and for you being here with us. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a blast. I love any time that I get with you, Brandon. So Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. And for those of you guys listening, if you have not done so already, head over to iTunes, leave us a review. I'd be so grateful for that. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.